Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with Rick Clark, an entrepreneur in legal discovery and e-discovery, best known for building tools that bring modern communications into legal review. We dig into how AI is speeding up early case assessment, why cross-channel conversations raise the stakes, and what law firms need to adapt. Rick also explains what discoverable really means and why strong data governance can prevent ugly surprises later.
Hello, Richard. Tell me who you are and what you do.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it and appreciate everything that you're doing. Where I come into this is I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my whole career. Always have to scratch that itch and do that hero's journey. But what I've been doing for the past 20 years is working in legal discovery specifically. Then it evolved into e-discovery. And so I'd started a company back in 2018. And what we did was we were really building something to manage the modern data problem. And what I mean by modern data is your text messages, your Slack, Teams, all of your short messages, even WhatsApp, right? Like all of that is discoverable. And so we're taking that data, marrying it with your traditional email and documents and putting it into one solution for attorneys to review. Now, this can be done a variety of ways. They're doing it to just find out what's in the data, see if there's even merit to this case, or they're going through the general normal e-discovery process. So that is my focus, but I have also experience in forensics, and so really marrying the collection of the data all the way through the production, review and production of that data.
Yeah, from an outside perspective, I think it looks something like this. It is, some of these cases, if you're a law firm and you're trying to figure out, how big the hill is going to be to climb. Right? You have this body of data, which is almost, in some cases, it could be terabytes of things, whether it's documents through OCR required to be scanned and all the things that would go into them making those decisions on yay or nay on the case or how is the best tact and such, right? And you were doing this at a time when you started this, that was not a very easy process. When you first started this, that was a very manual process, right? You couldn't, like, how many times does the word blah show up? The best you could do, you could hope for was like a histogram of like most used terms, and then you can maybe go do some research into that. And I'm assuming it was to be a bunch of law clerks going through, going, I don't know, man, this is going to be harder, easier, But now you and then you kind of centralize that. Is that how things started?
So let's go back to before all of that, just right before it. So it was paper. So I started my career in Orlando, Florida from 2002, and then I moved out of Orlando in 2012, but I've been in the legal industry the whole time. But it started with paper. I remember getting like right out of college, wearing a suit in Orlando, Florida, going up, picking up boxes, bringing them back and putting them either into just copies or into a database where we're scanning and putting them in there. Not long after I started, fortunately, all of that data or the documents turned into data. It was, let's go collect CDs, hard drives, you name it, early days. It was just basically email and corporate documents. And so that process was a big hill to climb. In fact, being on the technology side, so I was initially services, but very quickly on the tech side, started a software company called Wave Software. Alongside of that, I started the Masters conferences. Masters conferences is still going, but it was all around to educate on this process. Like, so we have the email in there. Now what do we do? And you mentioned it sort of earlier, run keywords and a whole slew of Boolean logic searches to pull up those relevant emails, potentially relevant emails that would fit the case. So that was a probably industry-wide 5-year project to get that system and those processes more automated and easier to do. That takes us to the teens. So chipping away at that, helping case teams with that. But then we started hearing a lot about cell phones. Well, what do we do with all these text messages and how do we get that data off? So round two of all of this, automation and processing comes into play. And that's when I started that company in 2018, which was called ESI Analyst. That was revolutionary to a lot of these case teams as it pulled in the geolocation. So where was Scott around the time he sent a text message, then maybe switched over to Slack and had a conversation there? Like, we're putting all of that together. So cross-channel communications, where they were, you name it, and even social media posts, so that was the next hurdle. Now, I would say we're not on the other side of that yet. I think AI is helping, but there are still case teams. Like back in the day, attorneys would argue against email and say, let's just stick with the file cabinets. They're saying, let's just stick with the emails and not worry about the phones. That is, fortunately and very quickly, becoming obsoleted.
Oh, only because the mountain is so high to climb. You're like, why just go after the emails? It's easy peasy. It's already indexed, right? I can easily suck that into some PST file or whatever you want. Just drag and drop over, and we can parse it. And and I'm imagining that AI is. I mean, I would imagine you can do a lot of really interesting stuff. Classification, classifiers or sentiment, right? Was this go find all the negatively sentimented, if that's a word, emails about with it include this. It still feels like a giant Boolean search with added steps or less steps, right?
Yes. So there was a thing called technology assisted review or continuous active learning that was introduced in the mid-teens. That was the sort of the first crack at AI, and that was the categorization. So let me run some searches in this data, surface some documents that I like. Hey, find more of these. Sort of Pandora, play for your review, right? That now I believe, and many others do, is that's getting leapfrogged by the use of AI, and AI is getting used in a few ways. One, the initial challenge that attorneys have is they have millions and millions of documents to review. And so what happens is they'll hire managed review teams out of the US or India, and they'll just one by one go through brute force review this data. And it's a process that is obviously very tedious, but is agreed to on both sides, right? Now, what AI is doing is it's doing that categorization first, right? So let me put together 15, let's say, issues that I'm looking for in the data. So those each consist of 15 different prompts. That then pulls up all of those conversations. Now, this could be a conversation in Slack, Teams, emails, documents, any number of those things is part of that corpus of data that gets pulled up. Then the attorneys will review that. They'll see a summary and in that category, and they'll sort of assign out that to review. There is one challenge with that that's currently getting settled throughout the legal industry, and that is, are those prompts, are those issues, is that work product, or is that like the exchanging of key words and key terms that normally happens out there? Well, it seems to be landing on work product, and so a lot of these cases aren't leveraging this necessarily just yet. So that's getting worked out. But where it is coming into play is on the early case assessment side. Let's find merit. Let's just run this into the system and start running searches. Scott and Rick, conversations about this, that, and the other. Do those exist? Is there smoke before fire? Let's find those potential smoking guns, et cetera. And let's do that very quickly. That doesn't have to get exchanged with opposing counsel. You can do that all on your own. So it's less expensive to run that all through, but there still is significant cost in that. So that's also getting worked out.
Yeah, it's just interesting how there was years ago, right, when I first typed into, I don't know, the very first version of a functional LLM, which by the way was really slow and kind of worked, and this magic popped out at the end of it. I'm like, oh, this is kind of bonkers, right? It was able to kind of like in a coherent way predict word after word. And I like to be very clear, it's not AI. It's just an LLM, right?
Right.
And it was always a thought that, this technology is going to fundamentally change legal, period, forever, right? Only because it is such a massive, it is really pretty good at sussing out certain things. So, but really it's just kind of sussing out patterns and such, right? But there's also a bunch of other side effects, right? Like go count all the times this was mentioned, right? That's huge in a legal case. Did you know they mentioned this blah, blah, blah 74 times in 4 days after, well before this is public knowledge or whatever, right? Oh, that's so valuable. But it was so hard to find that data and expensive to get those type of banter, but those kind of things to kind of talk about in a case. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is very true. What we are finding though is that AI is helping to surface any of those key artifacts or ideas, early on in the case. We're even hearing it from the information governance side. So AI models going and living in a corporate environment and looking at, okay, is Scott still happy, or is there chatter on Teams that shows that Scott may not be happy with his job for one reason or the other. And it sort of gives the, not emojis, but like you get the idea, right? It's sort of a not totally mad face, but then gives you the data that is referring to. So even things that I mentioned earlier on the ECA side, yeah, Scott and Rick were talking about this. Here is a link to that conversation in Teams. And there's even now chat bots that are getting layered in. Hey, are there any conversations between Rick and Scott that are nefarious, or whatever you would do as a prompt, and then it would pull those things up. So it is very quickly changing the way that legal is. And we always hear it. AI is not replacing attorneys, but it will replace the attorneys who aren't using it, right? Like that's that big scary thing out in general, but it is kind of true. Become very good at leveraging AI. Start with ChatGPT and write better emails. That, start using it in normal ways, and then that can help train you in your legal practice as well.
But it smells a little bit like an arms race, right? It's there's like, I was, my wife's Belgian. We were in Belgium years ago, and there's this one town that had been sieged by the Vikings like 150 times. I love the Vikings. Every time they were on their way to Paris, they'd always go by this one poor town and would just ransack it. And they were just desperate for a weapon, right? And at the time, the Vikings were still a little Bronze Agey, and then someone went and sold them like steel swords, right? Which is like a game changer. And it was just, and then the Vikings had to get it. It was just kind of an arms race to kind of figure out the what's what. If you're a law firm using Bronze Age swords, you are going to lose, or it's going to be so prohibitively expensive to fight to begin with, right? And I think that is part of the thing that your organization is bringing to the table is you're selling swords when a lot of people haven't even got there yet. They're still using old kind of technology, Bronze Age swords, because think about it. If you go up against opposing counsel, right? Opposing counsel has $1 million in the bank. They're going to go fight this tooth and nail, right? But they've only got $1 million. Some of these cases go for years and years, right? But now 3 lawyers could do the work of 100 lawyers, because they can go through all the data, find the single best possible, outcomes in terms of understanding the case and how to fight it and such. How can you compete? Even if you had $10 million as a war chest, right? And you're not using AI, I don't think you have a chance. Well, you have less of a chance even at that higher dollar number.
That's exactly right. And if you're not using it as defense counsel to initially take a run at the data and understand the case, other law firms are going to be doing that, and you will start to potentially lose your clients to other firms that are leveraging this type of AI. Now, one of the things that I mentioned earlier, what was called TAR, the learning curve on that was pretty significant. You needed SMEs to really understand what's in the case, how to form the models. This is very different. This is just ask a question, right? Like, so that's what I'm saying. Get used to using ChatGPT generally, and the same sort of workflows are what's getting built into review and making that a lot easier.
What's interesting is that this is going to start to, whether we are seeing it yet now or not, this is going to push out a lot of the old crusty dudes that have been in this law profession, for 50 years, who won't be able to compete. They will, no matter how good they are, right, at case law, no matter how good they are, at coming up with strategy, right? They will not be able to compete with some kid 3 years out of taking his bar exam. With someone like this, they won't be able to compete.
That can be true. I will say that the way that law firms are structured, let's say large law is structured, is that the case is managed by that partner, and then the tasks and things, then strategy gets developed within that case team. So yes, some will probably just say, yeah, this is my time. I'm going to pull the cord and retire. But others still love that. They're making quite a bit of money and they're just sort of quarterbacking everything and hiring the right people. And that would be what I would say. If you're an attorney, you still want to practice, find the right teams that can manage AI, let them run those processes, find that data for you, and then you can still manage a very healthy practice by getting the right experts involved.
It's fascinating, right? Because before that was this $500 hour, kind of expert human that could go through all this data or whatever and maybe have an opinion on it and then present those opinions, and then then counsel could go figure out the what's what strategy and such. Now it's, hey, we dumped every Slack message that we're allowed to, because sometimes you're not allowed to do certain things, and that could get you in a lot of trouble if you were to uncover some piece of evidence that wasn't allowed. This thing is probably pretty good at classifying that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And now, from one spot, people are probably getting pretty good at using ChatGPT to begin with. Now they can suss out with prompts this body of data that was untouchable, unimaginably complex, right, to the to a human, and now it's just accessible. Here you go. Go figure out all the problem spaces, and now be as imaginative as you want to be to go figure out, to suss out the actual angles and such. That is, what a fantastic use case for AI. Maybe one of the best I've heard.
Yeah, and I love it too, and I'm knee deep in it. I was speaking on it again last week, and it changes from month to month. I mean, the technology is getting built right under us as we're out there consulting with it. Hey, there's a new chatbot feature that's added in here that can help you find things even faster. So yeah, it's becoming more prevalent in first educating themselves on what's available, and then now getting hands-on using it. It's that curve, the hockey stick curve in adoption. It's happening very quickly, and needs to, because you and I might start a conversation over email, switch over to our text messages because it's easier, maybe even Slack or Teams. These cross-channel communications are hard to manage generally in a document-centric world. So our platform lives in more of a metadata but looks like document world. But other people, they're going to convert everything to a PDF or a TIFF to then go through review. That makes it a little bit more challenging to find context within communications. And so it's all these considerations that as a technologist we have to roll, layer in and consider.
Yeah, that's it's you're in a very interesting spot in that it's I don't know, it just feels like this the kind of kung fu that your organization has kind of brought together. I feel like it could be used in a lot of other places. I know law is your spot, right? But this could be used for a lot of other things in terms of forensics, and not just legally speaking, but
That's right.
Something as droll as HR, right? How do we get here, right? Or something is more exciting, kind of other areas. It takes this giant body of data and allows you to kind of gives you access to it. Now, are you actually in the zeros and ones of the actual data? Or where are you in the organization now?
So going back to when I started, if anybody out there who started a company and there's only two of you, you do get into the zeros and ones. You do project manage. You do sales engineer. You do all the hat. What I did though when I came to Cloud9, when they acquired us in 2021, I unlearned how to demo and how to do those things so other people can do that, and I could focus more on the things that drive better strategy, get us out there more, all of those types of things. So my focus is I do jump on case consults, very, very tricky ones, but mostly now they let me go out in the wild and speak at conferences, and which typically are large law corporate conferences, and write blogs and all that stuff. So more content driven. And then, but yeah, I've worked on cases where a good fun example that everyone loves is there was a C-suite executive who deleted everything off of his phone just normal. Well, opposing counsel, this is quite a few years ago too. So, or let's say within 6 years, opposing counsel said, hey, it's the data is in the email, not in the text messages. And well, after a few backs and forths, they said, no, it's in the text messages. We need you to restore those. Well, they were gone from this person's phone. Well, we went and collected over 100 devices from friends, family, coworkers, and restructured those threads as if it came from that person's phone to begin with. So for you out there who, think data disappears, sometimes it is true. Oftentimes it is not. It's backed up to your iPad. Maybe you've got it set to your, save on your laptop as well. Those are secondary places where forensics will look for that data.
I mean, how do you deal with things like Signal or WhatsApp or things that are allegedly, right? That data, is that still stored? Is that still discoverable?
Yes. So Signal, you have to go and collect directly from Signal, so it takes maybe some extra hurdles. But believe it or not, WhatsApp saves to all the text messages to a table on your phone. So those are always discoverable, even though they're encrypted end to end. I've seen a lot of WhatsApp messages where people are quite cavalier, thinking no one's ever going to read those.
Because it's secure over the line, right? It doesn't say we're secure data at rest. It just says it's no third party is going to listen in, which isn't really the problem, is it? It's
exactly right. That isn't the problem
in a legal case and such. So okay, where do you see this going in like a year, 5 years, or 10 years? Like, what is this? Are we going to get? It feels like this is going to be a very natural lead into agents, or that can kind of go, hey, I need you to go figure this out. Right. And actually figure this out and rub up against some of the case law that exists and go do a comparison. We're ahead there, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're really nailing it. That's where I see this all going as well, is the general acceptance of AI used for baseline ECA and even into review, those arguments getting worked out. And then, yes, really growing the AI models to get more specific and granular and pull up data and I guess the evidence within the data that would normally not be explored. And who knows, right? Like with the growth of all the different types of data, people going on different channels to have nefarious conversations, those becoming discoverable and not easy to get to, but being able to get to, that's where I think things are going to merge as well. And then also on the information governance side, it's round probably 3 at this point for legal teams to tell corporations and IT, you need to get these things organized, the data organized a lot better, because now we have these other channels and things that are being used. As a quick example, one of my corporate counsel buddies said that there was an incident that happened. They have a no WhatsApp policy across the organization. And what they find when they collected this whole divisions group of phones, that they were all using WhatsApp on their corporate devices. So not nefarious, but just that's what they were used to using. And so it's really a compliance and IG move as well to get the houses in order.
Yeah, I wasn't, so the data governance side of this, it didn't become into my understanding until 20 years ago.
Sure.
So I was working at we'll just say a Fortune 100 in Orlando. You can just take a guess who it is. They purge their data every 3 years. I'm like, why would they do that? There's a reason, because then it completely destroys it. They're like, well, it's our policy. You can't discover this email that was sent 10 years ago for our detriment, right? And then they can actually, so there's not 100 years of discoverable data at any point in time that they actually they raise their liability level. So every 3 years, they just get rid of all of it. All of it. Every email, every single thing, you've got to put it on SharePoint. The moment you have, if you want to make it like forever. And now you know why. Well, now at the time I didn't, right? But right. I really understood, I really kind of understood now, recently, that's the reason they were doing it.
Yeah, that's a main reason. And some organizations, depending again on compliance, have to wait 7 years, but those policies those teams have done a really good job of organizing and deleting all of that extra data. I can't tell you the number of cases where they're like, oh, what's this server over here? And then that data is now discoverable and was probably pretty bad for them. So yeah, IG is very important.
Oh, so we found this NT40 box that hasn't been powered on in 10 years. Ta-da! It's all discoverable. I know that the hard drive is 1,000 years old, but it still has the data.
Exactly. And also, speaking of that, like we had one client who was very upset that his phones had to get collected and literally made us buy an air-gapped laptop and then chucked it into a fire when it was done, so it could burn up everything. But really, I mean, hard drives, you can still pull that data off of burnt up, smashed up hard drives. The only way to really write over them is just to download a bunch of movies and keep writing over that unallocated space.
Or turn them into dust. Right? There's only two. You have to literally chop it away until it's just dust, and then you're good to go.
Exactly.
But so what you're saying is the only way to overwrite the sector more than 5 or 6 times, with it's Disney on ice. We're just going to do that over and over again for the next 5 years, and then it's not discoverable anymore.
It won't be. It'll be very difficult to pull that any data there. Yes.
Richard, we're out of time, and you're very interesting. So thank you for doing this, and I'll make sure to kind of point everything we've talked about and all the different sources back to your site and such. And congratulations, you crushed it.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate that.